What are the biggest challenges when it comes to digital transformation?
It takes many forms. And the first one that comes to mind, just from scars of personal experience, is properly understanding what the current state is. So if you have a very large company that has a process that's evolved over time, especially if that involves out of band things, like we do this in system A, but then we get a spreadsheet and then we have a meeting, we make changes in the spreadsheet, we make decisions here, and then we load it back in the system. It's very hard to capture that in a process map. And it requires a lot of interviewing and interviewing the right people. So, I mean, I've made mistakes in the past by interviewing a leader who wasn't aware of like different things that were happening in different geographies with his frontline staff. And and so that's challenge one for sure, is actually knowing how the machine works. How do we go from opportunities in marketing and pipeline to manufacturing to sales to post-sale support, reverse logistics, and all of that? And what are all the iterations, and how much of that is in scope for us to fix in the first release of our product? And setting expectations and making sure that it actually is going to work for the people that we're targeting to sort of affect. And then once that's done, I would say translating that to the execution team is challenging. So if you are going to use agile development, if you're going to bring in consultants and you have very technical people involved, they don't have the time or capacity to understand the big picture. But yet they need to have a sense of that to be able to fill in the gaps. So as we work with our business analysts and we get requirements, we say, we want this interface to look like this. And when I push these buttons, I want to do these things. And invariably there's questions that need to be answered. And instead of having meeting after meeting after meeting, if as a leader or as a management team, if we can infer enough knowledge about how the organization operates, then our staff can fill in the gaps, right? And they'll know intrinsically, like, okay, look, we really need to move these things here. And then the outputs need to look like that. And so we don't want to have too many meetings, and we don't want to overwhelm technical people with business details, but the more they can understand the business, the better. And then getting feedback is also challenging. In any company that I've worked for that's undergoing digital transformation, they're always trying to do more with less, as it is. You know, everyone's busy, everyone's got their 9 to 5, they got their meetings they have to go to and their work on top of that. And now you want me to come to a stand-up Scrum meeting, or now you want me to go to a requirements gathering session or a QA, or you want me to, validate this data set. So there's going to be resistance internally, not necessarily to the project, but just the time consumption. And if you don't get representation from the right people, you're not going to meet their needs. And people know that, but they still have only, 8 hours, 9 hours in the day to get their work done. So it becomes very important to get alignment at an executive level that this is a priority. You work with those individuals to schedule in this work in a way that doesn't disrupt the operational work that needs to take place and doesn't burn out your staff, and gives an opportunity to get hands-on MVPs, to do the regression testing and user acceptance testing that needs to happen, and generate documents as well, right? So if you're going to do organizational change management, who's creating the training material? Usually getting someone from that department involved in that process is the best way to create training material, but again, that's more time. Those are big challenges. And now if you're talking about a change that's customer facing, how do you go through that same process when it's your customer? Like that, they don't have time for that. They don't have an appetite for that. You may be lucky with getting some sort of beta customers who put their hands up to say, look, I'm willing to kick the tires and give you some feedback. And I've been lucky enough to have some partners and channel partners and customers in the past that have done that. But that is a challenge. You're going to misstep, right? This is an MVP. This is a beta product. We're going to make mistakes. And so setting expectations and making sure there's lots of avenues for communication, for feedback, and that you quickly deploy resolution to those so they can see that you're making progress is important. Really, these days, rarely does it make sense to do a big bang project. It makes sense to iterate. So get something in the hands of customers or your staff, get their feedback, add feature sets, add complexity slowly, and sort of grow the product and get their feedback along the way. It makes it more effective. It results in more engagement from those populations because they feel like they have a voice in creating the product, and it creates a better product at the end of the day. I would say the other thing is really just organizational change management is really tough. I've never seen it done perfect. It's sort of a hard sell, I think, to leadership as a cost, because it does take a considerable amount of time and resources, but it's well worth it. And again, the bigger the company or the larger the customer base, the more value I think in organizational change management.